Okay, awesome. So, welcome everybody again to the call. This will be a very informative session. So do well to contribute as much as possible. I will be talking about working with Jira as a PM. This is actually an introductory workshop to a more informative, more technical, more collaborative series that we in PM Africa would actually be churning out to the product community in the next couple of weeks. A little bit about myself. My name is Derek Binigo. Currently residing in Port Harcourt, Nigeria. I actually started out as in the medical field. I studied human anatomy in the University of Port Harcourt. It was actually while I was in medical school, FEMED, that I switched to software engineering and learned how to actually write codes, right? So my first breakout to tech was actually as a software engineer. I remember working on a product in my second level that helped a lot of students actually get access to past questions back then. So that was a very exciting period for me. After I think about 4 5 years, I then switched over to project management, where I worked at Spinpop, and then I switched to product ownership, product management, where I worked at Demo Thematic, currently St. Champ, and I also spend time building a product that I actually love so well, which is Attainable. Today's focus would be mostly on first of all looking at Agile, and we are going to hamper a lot on adopting Agile in organizations, right? We will then dive into what it means to actually have the right PM atmosphere when you're working with cross-functional teams. We would also look at the product management workflow as well, right? Both before you start even using Jira, before you even begin development with the development team, as well as during the entire development process. And we would then have a practical session where I would actually touch point on using Jira, get started with the Kanban board, the Scrum board, and get a lot of questions from the audience about things that they're experiencing in their current workplace. This particular today's workshop is actually an intro workshop. We actually are looking to create more informative workshop sessions in the next couple of weeks where we get to dive deeply into each part of the Jira software and mostly each part of the entire PM process during the entire development angle of things. Now, let's talk about Agile, right? Agile is a mindset that focuses on. Sorry, can everybody hear me very well? No, can you confirm you can hear me very well?
Yeah, David, can
I
hear you
can
very
hear
well.
you very well.
Okay, wait. Someone just mentioned that we couldn't get me well, so okay, thanks. All right. So Agile is a mindset, and I think that particular one, it being a mindset, is the very first thing that we need to actually picture and keep, right? So Agile is a mindset that actually focuses on rapid deployments of a functional application with a focus on customer satisfaction. So there are two particular phases as well that I actually highlighted there. The first one is rapid, and the second one is customer satisfaction. The goal of Agile is build your product right, but ensure that you can be fast enough to get it to your customer, put it in the hands of your customers, right? And this is actually what makes Agile what exactly it is. Now, before Agile, so when I got into product management, right, they always told us that then every time you take a course on product management about Agile, and before Agile, what we had was waterfall. And I want to touch point on exactly what makes both of them different. Because there are actually cases where you actually want to use waterfall and it works totally fine for you. At the initial days, I felt like, okay, waterfall was what my great grandfathers and my fathers used, and Agile is the new thing that we should use. But after a while, I found out that there are actually a lot of projects that you don't even need to use Agile with them. There are very few and in different industries. I mean, tech is not the only industry in the world, right? So there are actually a lot of projects that you don't even use Agile, you still use waterfall. So I want to explain what makes waterfall separate from Agile. The first thing is waterfall focuses a lot on completion and perfection before launch, right? Whereas in Agile, you're delivering incremental value. So in waterfall, you see where a team and project lead ensures that, okay, you know what, we want to build XYZ, and this particular customer wants XYZ. So we have to ensure that XYZ is completed and is perfect without any bugs before we can actually give it to particular customer. And that's waterfall, right? Now, with Agile, you find out that the people you're building for are looking for value. And sometimes to build XYZ means that you spend 3 months or you spend 5 months, right? So what you do is that you ask yourself, instead of giving them the full cake, right? And let's use the entire analogy of the cake, right? Instead of giving them a full cake, which has both the main ingredients, the icing, the decorations, everything, can I give them a slice of that cake? Something that would actually make them taste the cake, probably even quench that initial massive hunger, and then be expecting more back from the team, right? Now, this is the first difference between Agile and the waterfall. The second difference between Agile and waterfall is waterfall focuses on project delivery, whereas Agile focuses on customer satisfaction. So in waterfall, the project manager is focused mostly on delivering the project. All they care about is towards, can we get this project to the finish line? But in Agile, you're doing everything possible to be concerned about, is the customer satisfied with what we are giving to them, right? Now, next one is on waterfall, requirements are prepared once. So because you know exactly what the client is looking for, you know exactly what XYZ should be, automatically what you do is that you get the requirements completed and then use the development team to have to start work. Now in Agile, requirements are always evolving, right? And this means that you may actually have, since you have XYZ known, and you start working on X, before you're even done with X, before you get to Y, you find out that, oh, the market has changed. I'm going to explain this better with a scenario. Yeah. Now, we all remember that in 2019, late 2019, early 2020, that was when the pandemic broke. Um, and the market basically shifted. Now, let's assume that you are building an events technology platform, event security, right? And your platform focused massively on people being able to actually come to your platform, find events that are happening around them, go to the place, and probably attend the events, which is a physical thing. If you had written out all your requirements completed and said, I'm going to get developers that work on only these things for the next 8 months, and that's a contract with them. Basically, because of the pandemic, you would have found out that you'd have spent money that you need to spend. Why? Because the market shifted automatically between 2020 January down to March. So for a very long period since then to now, people have been focusing massively on virtual workspaces, virtual hangouts, and there's actually less focus now on physical, going to activities actually physically. Right? This is because the market always changes. In Waterfall, we also have you doing testing after you've completed development. But in Agile, there's what we call continuous testing. So for every single piece of feature that is actually created, you're always testing continuously and seeing how they work. So that before the next set comes, you can actually be able to understand, oh, does this help us modify the previous requirements? The last but not the least is that waterfall is a very linear and sequential approach. So you know your beginning, you know your middle, you know the end, and just take it one line straight down. In Agile, you basically let adopting an iterative approach. Because sometimes you build a product, you build a particular value, you give to your customers, they use it, the market changes a bit, people actually give you feedback and find out that this feedback actually helps you to go back and modify your requirements. So you're always iterating the product that you've built, right? So your version 1 will end up not being what becomes your version 1.8, or even your version 5 itself. And these are the core differences between waterfall and agile. Now, I'm very concerned about this particular slide, which is agile in organizations, because as a young product manager, when I started a couple of years ago, the firm I joined, they were practicing agile, and the CEO told me how he wanted to take things very seriously with agile. He had read a lot of things about agile. So basically, he had a lot of massive textbook knowledge, right? Which is something very common. Every CEO, every lead wants to know as much as they can from as much source as they can. Now, it was a consulting company, right, where we had different teams that worked on different clients' projects. We basically are serving clients across different industries in different regions of the world. And when I joined the company, I noticed that the company was working with Scrum. But a lot of things that I read or I researched when I was wanted to become a PM that they were not implementing. it was very hard for them to start adopting these new things. The developers are very adamant. Now, if you work with developers as a PM, you know that developers can be a massive pain. Sometimes you don't blame them because all they just want to do is to just write out code and ship out the code, right? They don't really care much about your processes. They just want to tell them, do this, give me this, and that's all they want. They don't want you as a PM to text them late at night, or they don't text them in there and say, what are you working on? They just want to just focus on their job, and when they are done, they'll send it to you. Some developers have also modified themselves to love working with PMs. So in a lot of organizations, you find out that preaching agile to them is a very Herculean task. Maybe the management, the CEO, the lead, they don't really understand this particular thing very well. And there are actually some very underlying problems that they may have. The first one I highlighted was what I call the perfection mindset. So there's a massive extreme focus on shipping a perfect complete solution against providing incremental value. So example, right? Your boss is telling you, listen, the clients want XYZ, and we have to give the clients XYZ. Right? He wants XYZ to be perfected. He doesn't want XYZ to what's the word? He doesn't want XYZ to basically break when the clients are actually using it or when the customers are actually using it. Right? And because of this, you find that you spend so much time developing, the market actually shifts now involved. So because of this now, they can't actually focus a lot on agile implementations. Because it's all about ship it out, ship it out, ship it out. It has to be completed before it actually can be shipped out. You end up spending 6 months working on an MVP alone, right? This happens a lot. The second one about treated practices. So people say they are implementing agile, but the way they implement agile is not the way they should implement agile. And because of this, they start blaming agile for problems that they are having in the entire workflow. Right? I've seen a company that did daily stand-ups for about an hour. So they spend 1 hour on a stand-up call. I've seen a company that spends less than 30 minutes on sprint planning calls. I've seen a company that basically did a sprint for 2 months. So they had a 2-month sprint. Right? I mean, there are a lot of things that people do and they modify because with time you find out that the more you keep growing, the more you keep expanding, new might come to the company, new costs come to the company, and you don't really maintain these processes with time. The third one is wrong foundations. So you find out that if you're building the wrong product, even if you use the best form of agile, right? Even if you use agile the right way, you would still keep out the wrong product. Agile does not help you fix the wrong product. But the good thing with Agile is that it helps you discover that you're building the wrong product. But I've seen people who are actually adamant towards building the wrong product. So because their foundation was flawed, they didn't highlight, oh, what is the problem we're solving? Who are we solving the problem for, right? Because of this, they actually ended up having a very wrong process, and they started blaming it on Agile and not on the product that they were working with. The last one is adoption, and this is actually where a lot of product managers sort of like have challenges with. When you are working with your product team or development team, you find out that many of the engineers, your leads, they don't practice Agile. So you sometimes you get to even asking your engineers, oh, please, what are you working on currently? But you have a board, you have a Jira board, you have a workflow board where you have tasks outlined there. But for some reason, every task is actually to do, and the only time the tasks move is when they move from to do to done. So there is no other workflow between there, right? But because these people have not adopted Agile completely. Now, going forward, we'll talk more about how this can be improved. So the first thing first is Agile sessions. I always encourage product managers, right? When you join the company, don't just first try to modify things and try to make changes. The first thing you should do is to understand how is the team currently working, why are they working the way they are working, and in what ways can I gradually make changes that would not seem like the team is going to learn something entirely new so fast. And this is really important because the way you preach Agile to your team determines if they accept it or not. Mind you, you just join a new team. These people have not worked with you before. So your CEO has praised you how you're very good, you're joining the team, and everybody's like, if you're saying the guys, I hope it doesn't stress us. You're texting an engineer and saying, hey, listen, could you move your tasks to the progress board and to the QA ready for QA board? And the engineer is like, why is this guy disturbing me? I didn't do this thing before. This guy is a bit stressed. These things create a lot of lack of communication between teammates, and at the end of the day, you end up alienating your developers and having a tough time as a product manager. Once you identify the ways the team is currently working, why they are working the way they are working, is it because there's massive backlog of bug fixes that needs to be done, and because of that they abandon Agile completely to just get these bugs out? Is it because there's a very massive backlog roadmap, and to impress the board members or to impress the or to actually help for the next fundraising round, those just have to be done. So the CEO is like, you know what, forget all meetings, let's just all get to know, right? You need to discover why exactly are they not currently implementing Agile the right way, and how can I help them do this? Once you discover this, you need to actually create a before and after. Highlight to the person you report to, if you implement this particular thing, particular way, automatically this is the things that you get to see. You're a product manager. It means that the core of your work is focused on research and focused on numbers. So people want to know, your leads want to know, your CEO wants to know, this thing you're actually pushing towards, how would it help us improve? How would it help us improve our workflow? How would it help us to remove the amount of bugs we have currently in our backlog? And you have to convince them with that. Once you can do that, you're meant to set up different meetings, not one meeting, but different meetings in different sub teams to actually teach them gradually how to use Agile and the slight changes they can actually make to their current process. So if they had stand-ups for, let's say, 1 hour, how can you come back now and say, okay, you know what, stand-up should be shorter, and this is why. Instead of having a long discussion on the call about something that went wrong yesterday, why don't we have a shorter stand-up and then move that other information or that other conversation to a different call, so we can have a more productive meeting, right? You want people to understand that Agile is not meant to actually stress them. Because while the CEO, and because I've seen a company where the CEO was a product manager, while the CEO and the developer are talking back and forth about the things that the developer is doing that is not good, other people on the team are tired of the stand-up. So in their mind, stand-ups are stressful. It means that if they join new teams, they would never like stand-ups because they already have a perception that stand-ups are very annoying. Second thing is collecting feedback, right? When you start implementing Agile, you need to always collect feedbacks from your team members. How are they seeing the new processes? You find out that if you do the first step, the sections the right way, your engineers, your team would always tell you, okay, this thing is actually helping us work better. Or, I actually have more time to actually focus on my work. You want to ensure that feedbacks are always positive. If you do get negative feedbacks, what exactly are they doing that is probably wrong? Or what are you doing that can actually modify to help them achieve better? This is really, really key. The third thing is increasing the adoption. So always focus on talking more about the benefits of Agile, right? If an engineer had always spent 1 hour on the call, you find out that, okay, this engineer spent 1 hour on the call for stand-up, explain to them that this, if you do this in the right way, you spend 15 minutes. It saves you more time. The next is, you know what, let's try it out. You try it out once, try it out second time, you find that the next week, even when you're not there and somebody wants to take a call longer, the engineer will say, no, please, let's stick to the protocol of 15 minutes. Why? Because they've seen the benefits of that shorter call for stand-up. Also, I mean, there was also a scenario I've also seen where someone told me that their engineering team, whenever they went into sprints, they always had problems during sprint review session. So I was like, why? And they're like, oh, they didn't really understand. So we entered a call that day, and she told me her board, right? And she showed me the entire sprint board and everything. And I saw that the tickets were not properly defined. So basically, the sprint was being planned with poorly defined tickets, poorly defined tasks. How would engineers know exactly the work they should do if you don't clearly outline the tasks as well as the criteria that are also available, right? So we talked about it, and she found out that, listen, once you actually do things the right way from the backlog programming section to the sprint planning session, your engineers will actually deliver better value for you. And that's exactly what happened. Now, talking about cross-functional teams, it's also important to know that when you join a team or when you're currently working your place of work, always ask yourself, the people I'm working with, how do they work? Some people do not like so much meetings. Some people do not like so much conversations. Some people do not even like you messaging them when they're currently at their focus time, right? Some engineering teams love having meetings beginning of the day, while some love having meetings at the end of the day. You always need to find out which works for my team the best, and look for the approach that actually suits both you and suits both your team. No two teams are the same. So if you leave company A and go to company B, right, as a product manager, do not carry every single thing that company A to company B. Just understand who is at company B, how do they currently work, and how can I gradually implement the process I think are actually going to work for them, right? Because the both companies have different protocols, different standards, different people that work there. That makes your entire process or entire template not the perfect one for them. So you might make some slight changes, and that's totally fine. The next thing is always focus a lot on communication, right? So communication is actually effective listening and speaking. So you're not just using all the talking. Sometimes you also have to listen to what they are saying. Sometimes people have complaints and they have challenges, and the way they say them is not exactly how they feel. Probably they don't know how to actually express themselves better. As a PM, it's your job to actually understand, okay, what are the things that they are saying that they probably are not putting the right way, and how can I help understand and help fix that particular thing for them. Second thing that's very important for working with your cross-functional team is the frameworks you use. Focus on frameworks that increase adoption and continuous practice, right? So you need to ensure that your team feels very comfortable with the frameworks you're using. Can you teach them this framework? Can you show them why it's better for them compared to what they are doing before? Sometimes you're working with a team that basically involves a lot of people. So you have the developers, you have the designers, you have the SRE, that's the DevOps engineers, right? We have a bunch of um, 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 a bunch of skill sets all in one team. They have the QA testers, right? You need to ensure that these people are actually carried along. The work we do as PMs is not a very trivial work. It can actually be very, very cumbersome. So it's really important that you know how to actually listen, speak, and then working with the framework, know how to actually handle your team better. Now, we are at the first phase of this entire session. This is the discussion phase. I already told you guys at the beginning of the call that this particular call and workshop is different from every workshop you've been to. We don't want to just talk about these things. We also want you to talk about what you're experiencing. So we're going to have a time block 10 to 15 minutes now. Do you currently have challenges you're facing in your team in terms of adopting Agile? Right? So you join the new team, things have been very difficult. You're telling them about sprint planning, but they really don't want to do it. Or when they come to the meetings, they're not participating well. Sometimes you have it on their camera, they can't their camera at all. They're not talking, they're not even documenting anything at all. And then you have the sprint, you go into the sprint, and then you deliver nonsense. And your CEO is blaming you because you can't handle your team well, you're frustrated, you're tired. So at this point, we want you to tell us, right? So you can use the comment section. If you also want to say, also talk, you can actually, if you look at the screen, you would see a hand button like this. So just click on it so you can actually know those who want to ask questions, drop comments about how the issue they're currently facing their current organizations in terms of adopting Agile. So I'll just give it about 2 minutes to get questions in, and then we can take them at this point. After this, we'll go to the next phase. We have like 3 phases. Okay, I can see some hands up. So just raise your hand up, and please keep them raised so that you can be in the queue. We'll call you out one by one. So I can see Precious Oziemba. Precious, do you want to go now?
All right, thank you, Derek. Good morning. So I'm working with a team right now of developers, and then what we do during every sprint, like we have a list of things to do and all that. But then a lot of times, right? I don't know if it's common with developers. We sort of like don't meet up with the timeline that we have. Like at the end of a sprint, we have this thing to deliver, and then most times, yeah, a couple of reasons come up. This bug, the other one, this, and then we have to move things to the next sprint. I know the more you move it, the more it pushes things backwards and all that. So how do you handle that delay, that not meeting to timeline and all of them?
Awesome. Thanks for that question. So this is a very important question because this was something I experienced massively at some point, and that was also because of my experience level too. And I actually owe a CTO to thank for this because he sort of like showed me more about Agile and things I could actually learn to improve. Right, I product leader my CTO when I was working at Demos. So you find out that when you do not properly plan your sprints, you would always have this problem. Now, Precious, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, just if you don't mind. The first
Okay,
question
that's
I'll
fine.
ask you is, the first question I'll ask you is, do you experience problems where you currently have items in your backlog? Sorry, in your sprints board, and then let's say 3 days after the sprint planning, you've started the sprint, two bugs coming from probably the product that you're building, and then you have to prioritize those bugs. Does this happen a lot?
Yeah. Okay, no,
Okay.
not a lot, not a lot. Let me take out a lot. It happens once in a while. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, and those bugs are very important that you can't not work on them at that point. Is that correct?
Yeah, so for us, what we do is that immediately there's a bug, it's a product that is already live. Immediately there's a bug, we have to treat that first before any other thing we have planned to do.
Okay, great. So the first thing you need to know is that once you're working with screens, it means that you're automatically using story points, right? So once you're using Scrum, I'm assuming that you're currently assigning story points to each of the tasks you're doing. And I know that a lot of PMs don't do this. Sometimes it can be very stressful, just ignore it. Sometimes we do it, not do it properly well. Now, when you assign story points during sprint planning session, the team is committing to a number of story points. That's the first thing about sprint plan. I'll talk about that later in the call. The team is committing to a particular number of story points. So let's say they're committing to 30 story points for the next 2 weeks or 50 for the next 3 weeks, right? Now, when let's say day 5 of the sprint, to your QA people, your support channels report 2 bugs, very important, very critical. They're affecting hundreds of customers, right? Those particular bugs definitely have to be scoped to even understand what exactly is going wrong. So you do a spike on them first, maybe, and your QA testers do a spike on them to know where exactly the problem is coming from. Once that has been done, you need to assign story points to those bugs based on the level of complexity in fixing them. That's the first step. Second step is if for some reason you need to, and we'll talk about choosing Scrum versus Kanban because you find out that sometimes you probably are using the wrong framework. I don't know if that might be the case, but that happens a lot. Now, if for some reason you need to bring in a new ticket from the backlog, which is a bug, into your sprint, which is highly frowned upon in Scrum, right? Because you do not distort the nature of the sprints for any reason. But for some reason, it's important to be flexible and do that. If that bug is 3 story points, or if that bug is 4 story points based on the complexity, you have to immediately prioritize the 4 story points on your current sprint backlog. So you find out that if you bring in a 4 story points, your team committed to only 30 story points. So if you don't remove one of that 4 story points from your current work, your team is going to be working on 34 story points, right? And you find out that they did not commit to 34 story points, they committed to 30 story points. So they will not be able to deliver that 34 on time, except they are really good. But most likely they would fall short. If you also look at your sprint burnout chart, which we'll also talk about later in the call, you'll find out that automatically the burnout chart frowns on you. Because the way the lines go at that point when you inserted that new bug into the sprint, right, automatically goes up and then comes down later on. So it's telling you that, listen, you've actually done something that you shouldn't have done. So you need to actually rectify it. If not, you most likely have problems, right? And then there are other things like temperature checks that we'll also talk about at the end of the call. But does this answer help you?
Yeah, I
Precious?
see. I got it. I love it. Thank you.
Yeah, and just
Awesome.
to contribute a little on that, it's also important to prioritize your bugs because not all bugs need to be treated immediately. So you also need to have like a criteria for the kind of bugs that can interrupt your sprint. So for example, does it affect all users that users can't get to use your platform at all? or is it a UX or a UI issue? If that's the case, then you might not need to. It's important, but if you don't do it right now, it's not affecting your users, it's not affecting their workflows. So it's also good for you to prioritize those bugs. Another thing you can do, because this is what I'm also currently doing at my place, is keeping an allocation for bugs. So if I see that my sprint velocity, we can't handle more than 20 sprint points per sprint, I make sure I don't fill up the entire we don't take up the entire 20 sprint points. So maybe leave an allocation of 4 sprint points in case a bug comes up, because you also have to think about it that besides bugs coming from outside, while you're developing a feature or working on whatever it is you're doing for that sprint, bugs can also occur and they might need some more time in order to tackle or resolve those bugs. So it's also keeping that in mind. So and like Derek said, it depends on your team, it depends on the situation you're in. The major point is to understand the agile processes and make it work for you. So if keeping some space or leaving like an allocation for bugs in every sprint is what will work, fine. If it's prioritizing the bugs and letting them know that while the sprint is going on, these are the different categories or these are the different urgency categories for bugs, and it's only these ones that would interrupt the sprint, and you've communicated that, then that's fine. So just a short.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No
Thank you so
worries.
much.
Great. Okay, I see William stand up. I think I saw other people hand up. So if you raise your hand,
Yeah.
please, so I can pick you. William, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. So mine is not a question, it's just in response to Precious' question, and it's also just piggybacking off what Moyo was saying, right? So a couple of years ago, I experienced a similar challenge. So the key thing, how we resolved it was, first of all, just sort of tracking average, should I say, tasks and story points within the sprint that we could reasonably achieve, right? So we started off tracking off like I think about 4 sprints or 5 sprints or thereabout, and just seeing, okay, in this sprint, what's the average story points we're able to complete, right? Versus what was left uncompleted, and maybe number of features as well. And then what we now realize is that we were actually overclogging our sprints. We're trying to do too much within a sprint. So once we arrive at that average, we now say, okay, for each sprint, we'll keep it to an average of this story point or this number of user stories that should be worked on within the sprint. So I think it's very important to also do that tracking, because if you can't even track what's being done or what's the average you can actually achieve, it now just makes everything messy in the long run. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, William. Olabode, you can go now.
All right. Hi. Good morning, everyone. I think I've learned a few things from everyone this morning, and just something I've had actually a bit of a concern with the Jira tool itself, and this has to do with custom complex workflows on Jira, right? So again, this is a bit technical, and so I would try to just paint a scenario so you have a clear understanding of exactly what I'm trying to find out. Right, so you have a custom team. I mean, as you said earlier on, Agile has to be adopted based on the structure of the organization, right? And it's not, so again, you have a front-end team, you have a back-end team, you have a QA team. So what we do is we have a board for each of this team, right? And there's somewhat a rule that's on Jira that says that a task can only be assigned to a single individual. I don't know if there's a way around that rule too, right? But there are scenarios where you have a feature that currently somewhat requires 2 individuals to contribute to. I mean, they don't have a choice but to work on that same project or that same feature together. And I mean, you can go ahead to say you want to break the features down into as much granularity as you can, but then again, you're then faced with scenarios where you have duplicate content on your Jira board. Say, for example, there's a feature. The front end team needs to work on this feature. The back end team needs to work on some part of the same feature. And you have a front end board, you have a back end board. How do you synchronize that within a complex Jira workflow? I mean, so again, meaning that say, for example, your swim lanes look like this. You have a to do, you have in progress, you have awaiting API integrations, then you have a QA approval, and then you have a done. That's what the structure looks like in terms of the swim lanes. And then you have a situation where the backend is working on some features that is similar to the features being worked on by the front end team. They're both working on this. How do you actually allow for synchronization between this same?
Okay, I think we lost him there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I actually think I love this question. So do we answer or do we wait for him to come back? What do you think?
So I think it's a very good question, and I think it would make sense to answer it when you're doing the
Okay, he's back.
demo. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So I think
okay.
I got
He's here.
caught off at some point.
Sure, go ahead.
I don't know if you got my question. Did I stop? Because I just
Yes,
noticed
I
that
did. Yes, I did.
you understand where I got to, right? So again, the point is, how
Yes,
did
yes.
you ensure that you can synchronize this feature, a single feature across two different boards, while trying to not confuse the QA when it's trying to test that same feature across? I mean, at the end of that, so again, behind the scene, there's a complex workflow that drives all of these engagements, but you want to ensure that that's seamless, right? So I just want to get your view on that. Thanks.
Okay, great. So I would give the very quick, easy answer, and then the more deeper answer will be done during the workshops, right? Because we're going to have like series of workshops touching point across things like this and other deeper areas of Jira, as well as workflows with development teams. The simpler one is in a very simple setting without having idea about what you're building. I can say for a fact that if you have, let's say, front-end developer, a back-end developer working together on a particular task, you can assign the main story to both people. Well, we can't do that, right? You can actually assign it to the lead developer. So let's say if the front end is the lead on that, or the back end is the lead on that, it can be assigned to the back end. Now, there's also what we call subtasks, right, in Jira, right? Or we call them child issues. I have used child issues a lot, where let's say you have a feature called user to be able to sign up, right? That's a summary, and probably it's a registration feature, yeah? It means that would involve a front-end task. It also involve a back-end side of things. It's important that if you have subtasks, you can actually assign subtasks to each different engineers. And each subtask can be documented and have their own criteria for those engineers, right? And without those two subtasks being completed, that feature is not completed. So one thing I also did experience or see is that a lot of people tend to complicate how they use Jira sometimes. So you use different boards for different things. But at the end of the day, it's not actually affecting your entire sprint or your entire workflow, mostly when the teams need to intersect. So we'll touch points on that definitely during most of the workshops that we'll have both today as well as other weeks. But that's the very quick answer. If you still feel that doesn't solve, you can actually just put comments on the comment section, and then we'll pick it up just towards the end of the call. Okay, so I think we are now at the stage where we need to now move on with the presentation. We've hit our 15 minutes mark for the quick discussions. Thank you, Precious. Thank you, William. Thank you, Olabide, for the conversation. For others, please, we'll still have something like this again next very soon. So please, just ready to actually share your own thoughts as well. So let's talk about workflows, right? Now, when we come to workflows, I always mention that before you even start documenting on Jira, there are things that you have to do. So before you start documenting on Jira, there are things that you have to do, right? The first thing is I'm assuming that you just join the company, the new products that they want to work on, they have a problem and they know who has the problem. You need to first of all ensure that that entire information is complete. Because without knowing more about the problem and who has the problem, you are not equipped as a PM to even suggest or even lead your team effectively. Because the team would ask you questions that you can't even answer. You just say, oh, that's what Emmanuel told me. Oh, that's what Sarah told me. That's what the CEO told me. That's what the CTO told me, right? Let's just do it like that. And that makes you not effective. Now, once you have this information, the first person, and I call this your right-hand man, right-hand person, is the design person, right? Because now you want to look at what is the right solution for this problem. Now, at the design stage, there are different artifacts that need to be done. That makes life easy for you as a PM, right? The first one is, and this is based on different organizations. The organizations where you have a UI designer, away from the UX designers. This is where you have a product designer. That the ones where you have a UX researcher, a UI UX designer, and a product manager. Now, I don't know which one your organization is right now, but whichever one it is, understand that sometimes you're on a team where you only have a UI UX designer, and that person doesn't even do UX. I have been there many times. Many of us right on this call have been there many times where the person who is designing for you as UI UX designer doesn't even know UX perfectly well. They are good with designs and flows, but they don't understand the UX well. So you have to step in as a PM. Why? Because it's your duty to ensure that your product actually goes the right way. So what you do, you collaborate with them to come up with user flows. The user journey and the user flow diagrams are important artifacts that you need to have because it also helps the stakeholders, right, understand what exactly would the MVP deliver and how would it be done. It even helps your developers visualize the end goal, right? So when they see this particular information, they understand, okay, this is what the app does. They don't just hear you say it, they actually see how the user's journey is from start to finish. There are a lot of tools that can actually use to do this. In one of the workshops, we'll actually do this directly. Yeah. Now, after this has been done, you have to bring in your developers even before you start documenting clear requirements. It's important that your developers are part of towards the end design stage. So, and I've had someone ask me before, at what point do you bring your developers to the discussion? I'm like, it's not the stage of when tickets are ready for them to pick up. No. I mean, they are human beings, right? Nobody wants to be brought in to just say, come on, just go and go. Everybody wants to feel like they are part of the process, right? No matter how it is, they want to at least understand the process because this is something that they probably work for the next couple of months and it's going to be on their TV. So they want to be proud of what they are doing. It also makes you get a very good communication flow with them. And the easiest way of actually giving and getting their feedback is through the user flow or user journey. Because those things highlight what exactly the user can do. And when they do those things, what is the next step for them? It makes them think about what the solution might even be in the first place, right? And even visualize what integrations they might need to use and things like that. So it just gets the ball rolling. These are series of informal calls, informal meetings, to actually just introduce them, right? And sort of like whet their beaks about the entire setup itself. And after that, you now have the workflow setup. This is where you decide what is the right workflow for my team. The first point on different types of workflows in this. So you have to decide what is the right workflow that my team has to use. Are we using Kanban? Are we using Scrum? What exactly are we going to be doing? What are rituals? Are we merging both of them together? Because once you have this right, they are also in tune and they can actually follow you from day one. Now, during the design phase, I already mentioned you always need to understand more about your customer. So the user persona is really important. If you have interviews, research, fine. There are a lot of companies where as a PM, you don't do these things, I know, right? So there's really almost no need. The CEO tells you, once you do XYZ, forget about research for now, just focus on giving me XYZ. I am sure the people want this thing. Now, it can be very difficult to convince them that you need more information to proceed. Right? And this can be very tough. We'll also talk about how you can actually manage communication with your stakeholders in areas like this. The next step will be on user flows and journeys, right? You need to document these flows. If you're opportune to have UX researchers, product designers actually do these things, then work with them to actually have this information. Because it helps clarify things for everybody on the team. And it's a very, very good process. The next is the design review, right? Designers always want to have very clear requirements. Design requirement is different from the development requirement. And we also have templates that are creating as well for things like this in Africa. So design requirement actually helps the designer to know exactly what they are designing. For you to tell them what they will design based on user flow and everything, you also need to have some domain knowledge as well in terms of that product you want to build, right? And after this stage, you have to now onboard your team. You don't wait until they want to start work to actually start onboarding them. Like you always have to bring them in, like I said, from the get-go. Now, looking at the entire workflow setup, the right approach will always be the first thing is to pick a framework. So choose what framework It's going to fit what you're going to do based on the goals, right, and the vision that you're looking at. Once you pick a framework, based on the framework, you have to have your rituals. So the rituals basically is the set of meetings that you need to have, the do's and don'ts, all of those stuff, right? You need to actually have them all outlined. After then, you pick a workflow. Now, when Olabode was talking, he mentioned the swim lanes and all that. These are all development workflows, right? You need to actually decide what workflow works best for us. In a lot of companies, in a lot of teams, they have what they call code reviews, right? Some have very detailed QA processes. They have QA engineers. Some don't. Some as a PM, you have to QA the work. I mean, let's call it speed is speed. There are a lot of companies that still do that, right? And it's fine. These companies will learn, but at a particular point, you want the job, you need the money. You can't tell them to hire a QA engineer because they'll tell you, this is not ready to work, please go. So you have to actually pick up part of that salary. You have to actually pick up the entire workflow that will work for your team and pay that out. So that you can actually have a very good product when you deliver it. You also create the communication guidelines. What exactly does a team need to do? People need to understand, okay, this is how you can document things. This is how you document things here. We're going to work with Notion. We're going to work with Postman. These are document APIs. You need to ensure that your team understands what to do when something is blocked, what to do when the ticket is not properly documented, and things like that. You also have reporting protocols, right? So basically, how do you handle stand-ups? When they have blockers, how do they escalate them? How do you report to your stakeholders as well? Because understand that as a PM, you still report to stakeholders about how the sprint is going. Right? Many stakeholders get easily pissed and irritated because you tell them that this is a 2-week sprint, and in 2 weeks, you're going to deliver XYZ to them. And then you enter the sprint, and for some reason, your team does not deliver. So they commit, but then they under-deliver, right? And you find out that, oh, we didn't even finish the thing that we actually wanted to deliver for this sprint. Because the stakeholder was not carried along across the entire process, they feel as though you are not effective, you didn't bring out the best from your team. So it's always good to always carry them along with time. And then the next thing is to always iterate the Agile benefits. Because Agile is something that your team, they don't know it as much as you do. They haven't taken courses on it, right? So they are still learning. They are still toddlers, babies, right? Baby steps. You always bring back the benefits to them every single time so that they understand that using Agile, and these are the ways that you can actually implement Agile, right? Now, let's look at Scrum and Kanban. This is important because these are frameworks that we mostly choose from. I think there are a couple of frameworks. I haven't used other frameworks. I've used Scrum, I've used Kanban. I've also used Scrumban, which I'll talk about in a bit. So if you look at the top, you find out that the top seems to be more complex, right? So we have what we call the product backlog, just over here. Now, the product backlog allows you to easily prioritize what's the next thing that would actually enter into what we call the sprint backlog. Now, we have series of meetings that actually happen in Scrum. In the product, when you have items in the product backlog, we have what we call a refinement or backlog grooming to help carve out these tickets. Is it actually ready to be picked up in our sprints? Has it been estimated? Have engineers seen it? Do they even know what it involves? Have they asked questions? I'm a technical PM because I was also a developer and I've actually trained as a technical PM. A lot of product managers are not technical. Some come from the design background, some marketing background, some business background. Right? So you don't really understand much about pipelines, much about deployments, things like that. So if you have a ticket or a task that is very technical, you find out that you want a technical lead, or you want an engineering lead on your team to actually help you refine a particular task. Sometimes you need someone technical to actually work with you on a particular ticket and document it well. So I have the stories, the criteria, everything. And during backlog grooming session, that's where you handle things like planning poker, where you actually have to have your team to decide, okay, how complex is this particular work, so that you can actually assign a story point to that particular work itself. We'll touch point on all these particular processes in details in our next calls. Now, during the sprint planning meeting, that's when your team decide, okay, we have 200 items on the backlog in order of priority. How many can we pick up into our sprint? Now, it's good to remember that picking up items into your sprint is always dependent on the story points. If you're in the Scrum methodology, you always have to use story points. Right? Now, your team, and I think William mentioned this when he was speaking, you have what you call your sprint velocity, your team's velocity, right? And this basically means, and I'll explain it very, very easily. Your team works on a number of story points for the next 2 weeks. And when they are done, you find out that, okay, they picked, initially you guys picked up 40 story points in total. They only delivered 30. The next time if you are doing sprints, you bring in 40 story points again, they deliver 32. The next time you bring in maybe 38 story points, they deliver 32. What you do is that you've seen that, okay, after like three stable sprints, you want to actually take the average to actually determine what is our team's velocity. So you can easily say, okay, you know what, our team can only deliver 30 story points currently. So you try not to put in more than 30 story points next time. The idea with sprints is to deliver items as fast as possible, right? So even if your sprint is 2 weeks, but you finish before 2 weeks, you can always end the sprint. A sprint is only successful when every item that was taken into the sprint was completely delivered and was actually done, right? So it has to meet the definition of done for that sprint. And that's when you have what you call a successful sprint, which is what every PM is looking to get. Now, through the entire sprint itself, you have what you call the weekly scrum meetings, where you have stand-up, you also have the retrospective after the sprint review. So when your sprint is over, you basically are reviewing, okay, what was done, what have we delivered, and then you're shipping out that increments. So a sprint is meant to always have what we call the finished increments, right? And then the items, in case items spill over, so let's say the items are not completed, you then move them back to the backlog, they put into the next sprint itself. Sometimes items can actually be abandoned during the sprint, purposely, right? So maybe during the sprint, this particular item was entirely a waste of time. Now, it definitely does kick bad on your sprint planning skills because you should have seen that during sprint planning, but sometimes things can happen. And you actually abandon the ticket during the sprint, then move it back to the product backlog. So you can try to prioritize it or actually delete it entirely from your entire board. And then you have the sprint retrospective meeting. I see this meeting as one of the most important meetings actually, because it's a meeting where, as a PM, you're speaking with your team to know more about what did you do well, what didn't you do well, and what can we actually do well next time. So you want to know what went well, what went wrong, and then action items basically that can actually help them improve next time. During sprint retrospectives, you don't allow external stakeholders to join calls like that, because you want your team to be fully open and communicate about what somebody else could have improved on. And this is not a blame game. This is more like, oh, they're actually being very, very intentional about, okay, this is how we can improve next time and finish off the items that we have on our sprint backlog, right? And everybody takes ownership for things that they need to actually improve on. This makes teams self-organizing. This is actually the entire essence of the Scrum itself. Second framework is Kanban. And by Kanban, you can see how very simple Kanban is. Yeah. In the next slide, I think I'm going to point out what makes both of them different and where you think you can actually adopt each of them based on experience. In Kanban, you have a simple Kanban board, and things just simply move from the backlog straight to do, doing, done, review, and then finish. You can actually have more complex workflows, right? So things like QA ready, QA field, blocks, and a whole lot more. But in Kanban, the team always picks up items from the to-do side, moves them to in progress, and starts working on them. You can also put swim lane limits. So how much item can somebody have in progress so that they actually feel tripped or clogged? The aim of Kanban is actually to deliver items very fast, but to give your team more room to pick up items without being restricted towards time constraints. I would explain why Kanban is also important for development teams. Now, picking a framework. In Scrum, and I've used Scrum. Dedicated teams are teams that want to know, okay, this team is focused on a particular product. There is nothing else they are working on. So in a consulting company, right, you find out that you probably don't have dedicated teams because your team can pick up anything from different clients. Whether it's bug fixes here or new feature requests here across different projects, right? Now, you also find out that in Scrum, your team is meant to focus on new features and implementations, right? It can be very difficult to use Scrum and use sprints when you always have a mirage of bug fixes and support tickets in lots that you can't actually account for. Because the idea of Scrum is to actually ensure that your team can be protected from external influence, external work, so they can focus on the works that you need to do. Scrum is also, I always advise that Scrum is also for every stage of MVP development, because at this point, you know exactly what you want to do, and you have less product inputs or less bug fixes at this particular stage. So for Kanban, there's massive focus on independent on product feedback, roadmap, stakeholder inputs. Because this particular month, you may have like maybe 50 items in your current board, and next month you have like 25 things that came out probably just 2 weeks after. Right? So there is so much chaos, right, from stakeholders, from you as the PM in terms of bringing in new items to work from. You can also use Kanban in very late stages of product development as well. Most stages where you have, and I would say that stages where you have more experienced engineers who can actually deliver with time. Now, people have also adopted what we call Scrum Ban. So Scrum Ban basically allows them to adopt some Scrum ceremonies while adopting some Kanban ceremonies as well. So you see that they still maintain the product backlog, right? But they use a Kanban board, and they still maintain some of the Scrum rituals, like the retrospective. They also have a lot of daily Scrum, and they also have what we call the demos to the stakeholders, which can also be seen as a sprint review. So it's more like trying to freestyle Scrum and Kanban together to actually work well for your team. It's important to understand that both of them still have the same goal, which is delivering features, delivering increments as fast and quick as possible. You can actually learn and actually iterate. Now, talking about rituals, right? We have backlog refinement. And I would actually touch points more about why this is really important. So when you write a ticket for a task, and I'm going to call task tickets just in case. When you write a ticket, right, you find out that it's in the backlog, you always have to refine it. This means that you have to define what exactly does that task involve, the user stories, the acceptance criteria, right? You have to work with your team to estimate that task. The team will probably ask you questions, things about that ticket that will help them to know how tough the ticket is exactly. You also have prioritization. You want to know how important is this particular task versus the other task on the backlog. So should it be first on our list or should it be last on our list? Right. Now, we have sprint planning. This is where the team agrees on the sprint goal. So you get items on the backlog in order of priority based on prioritization. And you move them to the system and say, okay, you know what, these particular items now, we're going to work on them. The team has to commit to working on them. You have to ensure that there is no unknowns at all regarding that entire item. Now, once this has been done, you know that your sprint is actually ready to begin. You can start your sprint. You also have the daily stand-up. Now, daily stand-up is basically where you see every single day, you're going through your board every single day to have updates on what exactly is happening. I always tell people that if you're working on the sprint board, for instance, right, so you have a Kanban board, you have your the sprint board itself. You need to ensure that during your stand-up calls, your board is already you're sharing your screen and sharing your board, because your engineers should only give you updates on things they work on down on the board. This helps them adhere strictly to ensuring that all tickets that they're picking up is on the board, because you want to ensure that all communications about a particular ticket it's fully on a particular ticket itself. This helps you in numerous ways in the long run. When your sprint is over, you have what they call the sprint review. Some people actually tend to do demos on the sprint review day. So you want to show the clients, you want to show the customers the products, you want to show your stakeholders what have you done during the sprint. If it's enough, if it's complete enough to actually show you demo, you want to do that. If it was a technical work, you want to show documentations. You want to confirm and approve that the sprint was actually a success. And then you have the sprint retrospective, which helps you to now learn how you can actually improve going forward. So we are the last part of the set. We are almost towards the end before the main session. I want to know, does anybody have questions regarding implementing Scrum or Kanban? Or does anybody have comments regarding Scrum or Kanban across organizations in your office? We're going to time box this to at least 10-15 minutes again. So please go ahead. Let me look at the queues. And Christian, that's it.
All right. Thank you so much, Derek, for the section. That's really been insightful so far. So please, within Scrum and Kanban, which one is the most effective, or should I say efficient, that would be easier to implement or something? I don't know. Can help me.
Okay, so it depends on where you need to implement it, right? And which team you're using. So what product are you building? What is your team dynamics currently? And which do you think would actually help your team develop faster and give you value faster? So have experience in your team to both sprint and to both agile. Because I always feel like teams that are just starting out that are very, very new, very, very young, but less distracted, should always start with Scrum. Because Scrum gets them to focus on set of tasks and actually gets them to commit to work for a period of time. So it depends on all that. Now, once you have that information, you will decide as a product manager which one works for your team. There are a lot of resources that we'll still share on the community about Scrum and Kanban. I'll help you understand in what ways you use whichever of them. So I don't know if that helps, Kristen.
Yes, I understand.
Awesome. Hi, Michelle. You can go now.
Hello, I'm really enjoying this so far. I want to ask, how easy is it to get an organ, or how easy, but what's the best way to get an organization to adapt to Scrum if they're not very familiar to it? Like example, if it's a startup and they have their CEO and management and they have their team, but they're not really familiar with Scrum, how would you integrate it or implement it?
Great. So it can be tough. Mostly people who are very new to Agile entirely. The first thing to understand is that Scrum is just a framework that helps you implement Agile. So you're first meant to be the first preacher of Agile to them. And when preaching about something, I always talking about the benefits and how to help them improve their processes. So always have a before and after kind of tab right in your head. Currently, what are they doing? And in what ways can Scrum help them improve that? Because when you're presenting to your people, right, you find out that you want to ensure that they understand the benefits that it can actually provide for them, right? So once you understand what Scrum can do, you have to present to your CEO that, okay, this is why I think we should use Scrum. Because your CEO will be very skeptical. If we use this, will it make us deliver faster or deliver slower? And that's the answer that you actually meant to do. Does it help you deliver faster or slower? Right? I have to show him that, okay, this can actually help us be faster, but these are the ways we can actually use Scrum that would be beneficial to us. Don't forget that no two company has the same engineering workflow. So understanding which one is better for your team is more important, because if you choose the framework that actually makes them and choose the framework and you don't go through or don't follow through in implementation, right? Your CEO would blame you that, oh, Scrum is not working. But Scrum was not the problem. The problem was just the implementation of Scrum itself or the adoption of Scrum by the team, right? So that's the answer. But there'll be more resources on a workshop fully on implementing Scrum as well. I hope that helps, Michelle.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.
Henry, you can go now.
Yeah, thank you. I don't have a question on Scrum or Kanban or stuff, but I was on transit today, so I couldn't join the call early. I want to ask if it's recorded, if you can get opportunity to go over it all over again. Is it possible?
Yes, sure. So it's being recorded.
Oh.
It will be uploaded to our page and shared to everybody that joined. That's applied to join the call.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much.
Great. Tomisin, you want to go now? I hope I got the name right.
Tomisi, yeah, that's it. Hi everyone. Thank you for this session. Thank you. So my question is, where does cloning come in? When you are assigning tasks to a particular engineer or a developer, and you need to assign that same task to someone else. Is it possible that I can clone? Because I think cloning is part of the options there. Is it possible that I get to clone and assign to someone else? I don't know if you understand my question.
Yeah, I understand. So this particular question touches points on what Olabode asked as well, and we'll be picking particular complex workflows in later workshop, right? So we will definitely give you more information about that workshop, so you can actually join that workshop, because there's actually a whole lot about the assigning tasks to people and actually ensuring that when you assign tasks and all that, is actually helping to improve current workflow. So we'll pick up the exact workflow right later on. I hope that's fine.
All right, thank you.
Great. Hi Destiny, you can go now.
All right, good morning, everyone. So here's my question. So I'm currently on an apprenticeship with a remote team. So my team, we did retro last week. So my team lead told me to like document the concerns that was raised during the retrospective. So she told me that I should document and come up with a solution. So I'm a bit confused if I should come up with the solution or take back all the findings from the retrospective back to the general team for them to give like moving forward what we can do to improve some of these concerns that were raised by the team members. Then secondly, when you talked about Kanban, just to be clear, is Kanban seen as when you are working with like a Jira or a Trello board, when you like create tickets, then you move to do to currently in progress and completed. So I just want to be clear as regard Kanban.
Okay, yes. So I would take the first one. And sorry, the second one is but I'll take the first one now. So the first one, you did a retrospective. Your team lead asked you to get document the action points and what can actually be done to improve things. So the retrospective, right, is actually where the entire team is, and the sprint team working on, right, is they need to, what's the word now? The sprint team needs to talk about what went well for them and what can be improved, right? So you also are meant to talk about the action items on that same call. That's the first thing I need to highlight to you. On that same call, you want everyone to actually talk about the items, right? That's the first thing. And the second thing, right, is that if for some reason you miss doing that and you actually get action items, you need to actually reach out to those engineers, because you want them to suggest what they think can also improve how they are working. Don't forget that nobody wants to implement this. For a second question about the Kanban workflow, I think we'll take that as well in our Kanban workshop, right? But you can actually ask it on the chat just in case Moro can actually answer it in something that I've already talked about. That's fine. So we are pressed with time, so I'll just take two more people. We have Kelvin and we have Taiwo, and then I can now go into some workshop on the Jira board itself. Kelvin, you can go ahead now.
Yeah. Hi guys. So this may sound like a dumb question, but I just want to find out. So in talking about the process for building product, you mentioned that the designer is usually your right-hand man. So I want to find out, after the design, does it go to the back end engineer or it goes to the front end? Like, what's the process in terms of building the feature?
Yeah, so at the initial stage, right, when you're still ideating and come up with a solution, the designer is the one person that you actually go to because you and the person would work hand in hand to actually come up with a solution and use that journey for that particular solution itself, as well as the entire idea of how it should look like, right? And after then, it's basically a development team. So it depends on where you're currently working. It depends on how the structure is. Some teams have engineering managers. Some teams have engineering leads. Some teams is just you and the developers directly. You don't really, you're not really holding the back end engineer as a right hand man. Your team basically is your right hand people, right? It's just that initially, the designer is the one that you first communicate with first before you move on to the other. I hope that answers the question. Time we can go ahead as well.
Yeah, yeah, sounds good.
Thanks for me.
Maybe Taiwo should be the last question, I
Yes.
guess. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Taiwo, are you there?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Yeah, okay, so my question is a follow-up to the question asked earlier on about where I can get the video because I'm presently engaged in something at the moment now. But I don't know the YouTube page, so I don't know. What's the name?
The link is
Okay,
on the channel somewhere there. If you go into the messages,
Come again, please.
the link is in the channel. If you go to where the call is going on now, you'll find the link there.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Okay, please.
Okay, great.
Yeah, please can we
Okay.
move on to the next?
So you can ask questions more on the chat and we'll pick it up at the end of the call. So we want to dive into some look into the Jira board and touch point on basic introduction to the Jira board and setting up your board for the very first time, right? So let us proceed.